Hello and welcome to today's episode of Careers and Coffee. I'm your host, Kieran Buxton, Enterprise Coordinator covering West and East Norfolk, with Ashley Ruthven, my colleague, supporting me behind the scenes today on the tech side of the show. Today, our guest is Joanna Crane, sorry, I can't talk today, an undergraduate engineer who works at the Dyson Institute for Engineering and Technology as a degree apprentice. Welcome to the show, Joanna.
Hi, I'm Joanna. So I work at Dyson at the moment on a degree apprenticeship, and I'm also studying towards my degree with the University of Warwick, but the Warwick Manufacturing Group side of things. So that's the last year that course is actually running, and then next year Dyson get full ownership of our degrees. So yeah, that's all from me.
Brilliant. Great stuff. There's a lot to kind of go through today, I feel, but first and foremost, what does your role as an undergraduate engineer involve?
So on a day-to-day basis, on a week-to-week basis is probably easier. So on Monday, Tuesday and Friday, I'm in a placement in the research design and development team. So I'm either working in a mechanical or software or an electronics placement in year one. At the moment, I'm in a mechanical placement and I'm working in the motor drives team. So working on like developing test rigs and things like that. And then 2 days a week, so that's my Tuesday and Wednesday this year, I'm working towards my degree. So I'm studying 2 modules every term. And at the moment, I'm doing mechanics and electronics in those modules. And so that's the other side of things.
It's great stuff. So what is the actual qualification you'll get at the end of it?
So at the end of this, I'll get a level 6 degree apprenticeship in design engineering, which is the accreditation for the degree apprenticeship side of things. And then my actual degree is a bachelor's engineering with the University of Warwick. And that will be dependent on my specialism in years 3 and 4.
Brilliant. Thanks, Joanna. So could you tell me a little bit more about the Dyson Institute for Engineering and Technology, like a little bit about it, what they do, what opportunities are on offer, that sort of thing?
Sure. So it's only 4 years old. We're the 4th cohort coming through. So the first graduating cohort of this year's. And essentially it's a relatively small sort of university now, I suppose. Well, it's not a full accredited university, but we will have our own degree awarding powers next year. That with around 150 undergraduates, and we're all studying the same course, so we're all doing engineering, and all first years live on site as well. So we all live in these pods, which I'm in at the moment. Very nice accommodation, to be fair, and they're all en suite as well, so we can't complain.
Yeah, no, they look some pretty funky pods, to be honest. Quite jealous, actually. So just in terms of the actual training side of it, so you mentioned you were at the University of Warwick and it takes place 2 days a week. How does that training look like in terms of actually putting together that qualification base?
Sure. So at the moment, it's all online learning for this term, at least anyway. And then we have seminars and labs on site. So we get to go in, and Dyson have their own sort of learning space there. And then all of our lectures are online at the moment. But in previous times when COVID wasn't around, and hopefully next year, all of the lecturers will come down and then they'll deliver the lectures for us on site. So so it all gets delivered here. And then we do 6 modules a year for our first 2 years, and they're all contribute to our degree as well.
Great stuff, thank you. So obviously you've mentioned you were at the University of Warwick, worked for Dyson. However, you were originally based in Norwich and went to the UTCN, University Technical College, Norwich. And by the look of your description and from what you sent in beforehand, you did have a lot of options. So what helped you to decide that you wanted to take up this opportunity over your other options? And also what helped you decide that you wanted to actually move away from an apprenticeship?
Sure. So I think my first thing is that when I was at UTCN, I did a lot of sort of industry experience alongside my studies, whether that be with work experience, with projects, or just general liaison with employers. So I think that was definitely something that I knew I wanted to continue with when I went on to further education. I didn't really want to just be at university and be studying 24/7 and not have that sort of outreach of a business and how I'm applying that knowledge. So even if I did go to university, I knew that I would be, uptaking work experience or internships or something to get that sort of industry experience too. So with that in mind, I applied to Cambridge, Imperial, and a few other high-level universities anyway. But knew in my head that I'd probably prefer a degree apprenticeship just because that was the way that I learned a bit better. And seeing that industry application on a day-to-day basis really helped my studies. So I applied to Dyson, to BAE, to Airbus, all sorts of a wide range of apprenticeships really, and then later applied to BP and other sort of data science related things, because I knew that I wanted a degree apprenticeship by the end of that sort of first lockdown period. I was very certain that that was what I wanted to do. So having sent off all those applications and received a few offers, I was sort of determining what I wanted to do as our first lockdown came to the end. And I think a big thing for me was, if I'm moving away in what was still quite a serious lockdown, I suppose, come September and onwards, we knew that COVID was still going to be around. What sort of support were we going to have? Because if I moved away and I was just in a flat by myself and I didn't get to go into work, didn't get to go into study, I'd be quite isolated. So I think a big thing for me was having that community around me, and at least being here, I had the best of both worlds in some ways, because I moved here and I've got 30 other people on site that are doing the same course as me that I know I'm going to get along with because I've got something in common with. So I think that was definitely a big thing in terms of the social side for coming here. But also, I think it's probably the best balance I could find between a university course and a degree apprenticeship, because it just has, those 2 days a week which are applied, but the amount of support that we get with our degree, with our workplace, with everything really, even our social side of things, I do think is top class. I don't really think that many other apprenticeships are offering that. So that was probably the reasons behind me coming here.
Brilliant. No, that sounds really good. And to be honest, from my experiences, which I think is why it's not so common people moved away from apprenticeship, is because you don't necessarily get that on-site accommodation with an apprenticeship. You might get funded to go away for training, but not necessarily to stay on site. So that's brilliant to hear, and it's a really, really interesting and viable model. Just out of curiosity then, so once you finish year one, because you're saying you got this accommodation for year one, what happens following year one? Do you have to then find your own accommodation?
Yeah, so we all move out with housemates probably from our year, but some move in with other cohorts too, so maybe second years or third years, etc. But we get quite a lot of support with that as well. So we had an accommodation event a couple of weeks back. So if you're moving into the local area, so Wiltshire based, then you only need about 3 months, sort of notice for a rental. Whereas I'm moving to Bristol next year, so we actually had it sorted before Christmas because we're competing with other students that want student accommodation. But yeah, they've been really supportive with it too, so that's really great.
That's great news, getting that year to set up and then having all that support to then finalise certain bits as well. That's brilliant. I know you kind of, obviously you went straight into an accommodation anyway, which was part of the reason why you went with Dyson, that great offer. But what steps did you have to take to move away for the apprenticeship? So I know in terms of the financial element, the accommodation was sorted, but in terms of to mentally prepare yourself, to talk to your family, to talk to your friends, I mean, how did you prepare yourself to make this step?
So just quickly as well on that point with the accommodation,
Yeah, sure.
we're still paying out of our salary. It's not like included. It is, so we are paying for that, but it comes out at the end of the month with our salary, so it's very easy to handle when we move away. But in terms of like friends and family, I think a lot of my friends are moving away for university anyway, so it wasn't a huge difference. And I think one of the things with that though is you have to bear in mind with the degree apprenticeship, you do have a little bit less holiday than you would have at university, but it balances out because you're getting paid, so you have the money to enjoy those holidays if you want them. And I do think that sort of benefit is definitely outweighs the negative of having like a little bit less holiday personally. So yeah, moving away from friends was probably quite difficult, but then having just had those lockdowns and moving away during COVID, kind of social interactions are a bit limited anyway. So you don't really tend to miss like your friends as much as you would have done because you've had that break from them before. It just means that when I'm home, I really enjoy spending time with them, and the same thing vice versa. So I don't think it's really impacted me that much, but had I moved not during the pandemic, then maybe it would have been something that affected me more.
Okay, brilliant. So looking back again, kind of linking to where we had the conversation around looking at your options and choosing the best option. So, as I mentioned, you had a lot of options to choose from. But what made you stand out from the crowd to get this apprenticeship? Because, it's impressive you had all of them options, and I'm sure it's a very competitive apprenticeship by the sounds of it. So what did you do to stand out from the crowd?
Sure. So I think one thing that really benefited me was having those industry experiences. A lot of them were very unique in terms of what I ended up getting, because it wasn't just work experience, it was leading projects for businesses, it was completing tasks that they'd set for us as like a project. So at UTCN, we were really lucky that in year 12 and 13, we got a day a week where we were working on industry-led projects. Or, well, it was a non-contact day, but so you could use it as a study day, or you could use that to get work experience and to work with employers. And then we also had I think it was 2 hours on a, 1 day a week in our year 12, where we were working on a project that was set by an employer. So we had worked through the processes that we would in a workplace every week. And I think that was definitely something that helped me, because when you're interviewing and they're asking you about, what you might do in this situation, you've already solved a problem fairly similarly, and you might be doing something like that in your placement there. So that was definitely beneficial for me.
Brilliant. That sounds really good. And the other thing I want to ask as well around the whole makeup of it. So with apprenticeships now, I think most people are aware you've got something called an endpoint assessment, and an organisation attached to do that. So how will your endpoint assessment work? So is it going to be exam based? Do you have to go professional discussion? Do you know at this point what your endpoint assessment is going to look like?
Sure. So I know that we have to sort of compile everything that we're doing on a regular basis, and every 3 months we have a review at the end of our placement with an apprenticeship advisor. So it's tracked as we go along. And then at the last point, I think we have a presentation where we kind of deliver everything that we've done and what we've covered in our apprenticeship, and that we've met the criteria of our endpoint assessment. I'm not completely sure entirely on how that works yet. I'm only at the end of my first year, obviously, but in terms of those sort of trimester reviews, we just go through everything that we've learned in our placements and how that's contributed to our KSBs. So, yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. So I noticed something as well on your description around a project with like 3D VR wind energy education scheme. That's something you took part in there. Would you like to talk a little bit more about that? Because that sounds like a really amazing opportunity you were part of.
Sure. So that was probably my most sort of pivotal professional experience before I came into a degree apprenticeship. And it all started with me just volunteering to go out and join some UEA students to do to design a wind farm, essentially, on a project that was led by Vattenfall. So we went to the UEA, and there was only 4 students in my year, and I think a few in the other year too. And we went there to join in with these UEA students. So we designed a wind farm using 3D software, and then we're allowed to fly around that with a VR headset as well. And at the end of that day, us sort of UTC students had impressed Vattenfall, and we got the opportunity to then learn how to lead the program. So we came back the next day, learned how to lead it, and ended up delivering it to a few local schools. And then we continued to lead to some more schools after Vattenfall's support. And because of how we worked with them, they actually decided that it would be a really good idea if we could try and take this out to the Netherlands. So I ended up project managing it in my second year. In the first year, I'd led like the financial side of things, and sort of software walkthroughs and all sorts. And then in second year, I got to project manage it and work with 3 other girls and take this out to the Netherlands. So we led presentations on how to use the 3D virtual reality software and sort of all sorts of things that you have to go through to build a wind farm and the consolidation process of it. So I learned a lot about the whole wind energy industry and engineering industry in general. And actually, at the end of those 2 days that we were out in the Netherlands, leading to 3 different colleges, we went to Vattenfall's head office and were allowed to present about the importance of investing into the next generation of engineers. And without that experience, I don't think that I would have known I wanted to do engineering. But it opened so many doors to me and really showed me that, if a company does believe that young people can make a difference, it's absolutely incredible, because we got to go from just participating in a workshop to leading it in a different country. So from that, all I'd say is my one piece of advice from that whole situation would be, if you get an opportunity, just take it, because you don't know where it can take you. And it was just me saying, yeah, sure, I'll go along and help out with this workshop. And it led me in that direction. So, yeah.
Wow, what a brilliant experience, and well done for how well you took that on, and the fact that that enabled you to continue getting opportunities within that project and beyond. Just shows the good work that you and your team must have put in onto that. It sounds really exciting and jealous, really. It would have been great to be part of that. So you mentioned there about opportunities as well, which kind of leads me nicely on to this next question. So since you've started with Dyson and currently in your apprenticeship, what opportunities have you been given and what opportunities you've been have taken up even?
Sure. So we're very fortunate that with our placements, we kind of get ownership of our projects and we can take them in the sort of direction that we like. So there might be a goal at the end of it, but the way that you do that is very self-directed. And so my last project I had sort of full ownership of, and it was just me working on it, and we just saw how far we could get with it. So that kind of independence is definitely something that I value a lot, and they respect that we all work hard and we will get a really good output out of it. So that's definitely one thing. Yeah, it's probably the main thing for me, actually. But also in terms of, so experiences we've had here, socially, we have like a lot of events that are held by our social team. And then because there's 150 of us, we have like a small version of a sort of student union committee, I suppose. And it's called the Undergraduate Experience Committee. So I actually got elected as the outreach rep, which means that I get to liaise with a lot of people in our local community and do a lot of STEM outreach work and women in engineering and that sort of thing. But we also have like a social team that ensure that we get a lot of fun events and stuff to do, and we don't get bored in our spare time, I suppose. So there's always an event on. And then we have like a wellbeing and diversity team to make sure that we're doing well in our placements and enjoying it, and ensuring that we're in a good place in general. And then we have like a workplace team and an academic team as well. So wherever you might be struggling, there's always like a support network for it. So we're really lucky in terms of like, in terms of that support team.
Great stuff. Sounds like an awesome little committee that's going on there, and well done on getting elected to that position. So, talk about opportunities there, and this is still kind of on the theme of opportunities, really. But what are your future ambitions?
So I think it's quite hard for me to know because I know that at the end of this sort of 4 years that I'm definitely going to want to carry on in engineering. And I think I just want to see which direction it takes me in. I'm very open-minded about where I go. I haven't decided what my specialism will be yet. I mean, I've got until the end of second year to do that too. So I think there's a lot of different ways that I could go. But for me personally, I think one of the big things I'd like to do is just travel and explore sort of different cultures with engineering and ensure that I can get as much experience whilst I'm young as possible. And Dyson are very supportive of that too. They've obviously got manufacturing bases out in Singapore and hubs like all over the world. So it looks like there's definitely possibilities both here and elsewhere. But I don't know where exactly I'll be heading yet.
No, I think that's a really good message that you don't have to know exactly what you want to do straight away. But that sounds like some pretty cool plans, and you're on the right path. So thinking back to school, so we've spoken a little bit about your time at the UTCN, but potentially even before that as well. So between the two sort of high schools you went to, what was school like for you, and what were the careers advice like in both of those schools as well?
Sure. So when I was at a regular high school until the end of year 9, I was very much pushed towards university, and that's all I'd ever heard about. I never even knew that degree apprenticeships existed. And I was really strong in maths and the sciences too, but maths was definitely my passion and had been the one thing that I'd enjoyed most going through school. So when asked sort of like what subjects I wanted to do, I was interested in sort of computer science and the sciences and things like this. And at that school, I was quite limited with my options. So because I was attaining quite well, I was told I had to take a language. I had to do history or geography because that's what the best universities wanted. And by the end of actually that process, I only had one option as to which subject I wanted to take, and it was quite limiting. But I think it kind of showed as well that they didn't really support what I wanted to do in the future. It was very much about what was seen as best for me, as opposed to what I actually wanted to do. And then, so I looked at UTCN and I thought of engineering as a compromise at the time because I thought it was just men in workshops, like working on machinery, and didn't really see the higher level problem solving that goes behind it. and the incredible work that's actually sort of pioneering technology. So I went to the open day and was ended up being persuaded to go there. And I think the main thing for me was that it had STEM as a focus and it was pushing towards that side of things. And also it had those career links. So I knew that I was going to get a lot of insights whilst I was there. But I think, yeah, the main thing for me was having a wider range of options. I still took a language, I still took geography, I still did all of the things that I would have done at a regular high school, but I just had more support. I ended up getting 2 more GCSEs than I would have got at a regular high school because of the support I'd got. And they were in subjects that I was really passionate about. So I think it was definitely a big thing for me, was just the support in what I wanted to do with my time, as opposed to what people necessarily thought was best for me.
Brilliant. No, thank you for that. And you touched on that you did more GCSEs because of the transition in schools. What were the results like for you leaving school? And do you think that also helped to get to where you are now?
Yeah, I think my results definitely helped me. Particularly, I wouldn't have got the university offers that I got without them. There's no question about that. And also, I probably wouldn't have got this place unless I'd have achieved as highly as I did. But I think one of the big things for me was that without the support that I got at UTC, I would have really struggled to attain as highly. I think regardless of where I was, I knew I would work hard, but I might not have been as happy whilst I was doing so. So I could have received the same results had I have gone to a regular high school, but I know that I wouldn't have been as happy for those 4 years had I have done that. And I definitely know that I wouldn't be in the place that I am now as a placement. So I think, yeah, one of the things that was very key for me was having that support and being in an environment that I was happy to learn in. And I was very fortunate that I found that in year 10 and continued with it for 4 years and received really good grades because I was happy there too.
Brilliant. So, again, linking on to your journey to get to where you are now. So on top of getting really good results and obviously you've had some really good experiences with the UTC as well, what are the key skills you would recommend that are needed to gain an apprenticeship like you're on now?
Sure. So I'd say your personality is key when you're in interviews, and that's why I think a lot of interviews, it might be you'll have a personality based interview first and then your technical interview, because they care a lot about who you are as a person, and then after that your technical knowledge is important, not the other way around. So I think it's very important to be kind of collaborative, to be communicative, and to be able to work in a team. So even though I might be working on a project that's sort of self-directed, I report to a line manager, I work with a team, and I might need help. And well, I will need help. There's no question about that at some point in time. So you need to be able to reach out and ask the right people for help, or at least try and network and find those people. And also even with coursework, you might have a team of people that you have to work with. So it's very important to have those skills, and I think they're everyday things. And I think also in terms of like an engineering context is very much about how you think too. So if you think in an analytical way and you're able to solve problems in a sensible way, and you think outside the box as well, and you have a bit of creativity, I think those skills were definitely things that were picked up and are the reasons that I'm here now. But yeah, I think those personality traits are definitely key to anyone who's looking for an apprenticeship in general, because they're things that all employers will be looking for, because they're important that you can work in a team.
Brilliant, thank you, Joanna. And again, the last sort of maybe question around your journey in particular is around work experience. So I know you did quite a bit of sort of work-related projects when you were with the UTC, and also got to take part in that project with Vattenfall. So would you recommend work experience? And if so, for a role like this again, is there any particular work experience you'd recommend?
Sure. So I think work experience is priceless, and if you have any opportunity to do it, take it. There's no question about that. I think the main thing for me is that with work experience, I never really knew exactly sort of where I wanted to go in the future. So never turn a place down, or always look for any option you can get, take it, because you never know what you might enjoy. And I think that was definitely something that helped me. So I went to some companies that I didn't think I necessarily wanted to go down the route of. So like, I didn't think that energy was a career that I'd be interested in, but actually in the future, it might be something that I go on to do because of that experience I've had. And I thought the whole time that I wanted to go into technology, that I wanted to work in sort of software or cyber. And year 10, 11, they were my passions. And then I went into the course at BAE and spent a week there as on an aerospace engineering project, and actually found that I really enjoyed the engineering side of things and the aerospace side of things too. So without taking up that opportunity and going down a different route and trying it, I would never have known. So yeah, just take any opportunity that you can get, because you really don't know where it might be able to take you.
Brilliant, some great advice there. Thank you, Joanna. So looking back to when you were, it's probably this year 9 transition again as well, so thinking back to when you were around 13, 14. Is there any advice you'd give to yourself? Like, is there anything you'd advise yourself differently to what you did at the time?
I don't think so. I think I would have tried to convince myself that it was the right thing to do, because I spent a lot of time contemplating it, and I should have just gone for it. I should have taken the leap and tried to go and try something new. And I'm really glad that I did. I think having the advice of take any opportunity you get and speak to as many people as you can in terms of networking, I would have liked to have heard earlier. I don't think that I heard it early enough. It got to sort of year 11, year 12, in the end of those years, when I actually opened up my mind and was happy to take any opportunity that came along. Whereas I was very closed-minded in sort of year 10, 11. I was like, no, I want to do technology. I don't even want to look at engineering. And I was just oblivious to the fact that it was something that I was really going to enjoy. So I think, yeah, I would have taken that advice on earlier. And one other thing that I'd say is a piece of advice that stuck with me was that it's not an option until it's an offer. So I was always thinking about how I wanted to do a degree apprenticeship, and there were certain ones that I'd sort of thought in my head they were the ones that I was going for. So I had them in my head as, oh, that's an option. I could just go there instead of going to uni. But it wasn't that easy, and a lot of them I didn't get accepted to. So it wasn't on the table for me to look at and say, yeah, actually I could do that, but I could choose it over something else until I'd been offered that place, because it wasn't mine to consider. And I think, yeah, that's one thing that's really crucial, is apply to as many things as you can get, because it isn't an option there until it is a final offer. And it definitely changed my perspective on things, because I was waiting for those offers before I considered, actually, is this definitely what I want to do over something else? Because you just don't know.
Brilliant. That's a great bit of advice. So I'm going to move on to the final couple of questions. So firstly, because you obviously, as we mentioned around the theme, you've moved away from this apprenticeship. Is there anything in particular you miss about Norfolk?
I think obviously I grew up there, so you've got that family, you've got your network of people that you've known your whole life, and it is really good going back and seeing those people. So definitely like people, I'd say, but I've kind of feel like I've built a community here already since I've been here, and wherever you move, you will find people around you that you'll get along well with and you'll feel at home with. So I don't think in terms of moving away, it's been a huge thing. And you'll always get the chance to go home. It's not like you're going to be here forever. You'll never have a really long period of time where you don't go home. So they're always there, and I know that they're only at the end of the phone if I ever want to speak to someone. So I don't think that moving away is really as scary as I've thought it was going to be. So yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. And I'm on to my final question, which is actually more about your interesting facts. So I see that you have a pretty impressive stat when it comes to karate. So would you like to tell everyone a little bit more about that? Because it's a really impressive stat, so I'm quite interested to hear about it.
Sure. So I started karate just before I was 6. So I've done it like my whole life. And actually moving away, that was one of the things that I've missed, because I haven't had my karate club here. So and it was something that definitely drove me forwards in all sides of my career as well, and education, because it was just an outlet to go to and work hard at, and it definitely taught me values like dedication and ambition and teamwork too, as I actually sort of started to teach and work in more teams. But in terms of the stat, yeah, so I I had been training for years and years, and competing sort of from around 12 to 18, and just after my 18th birthday I went out to the European Championships, and it was around the 4th international competition that I'd represented at, and won 3 gold medals. So and that was the last competition I actually did before lockdown and COVID and everything, and might be the last one for a while too. But yeah, it's definitely something that's helped me in sort of all aspects of what I've done.
Brilliant, a very impressive and interesting stat to end on there. And also maybe that's a tip as well, if you're going to move away, learn some karate to make sure that you're nice and protected too. No, I'm joking, but no, that's a really impressive stat, and well done. That's a great achievement as well. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Joanna. Got away lucky, no live questions today, but no, some really good, valuable information there, and really enjoyed the conversation, so thank you.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. See you soon. So that's all for today. Thank you again, Joanna, for coming to the show. That was a really good and insightful experience into moving away from an apprenticeship, and as well as some really useful hints and tips there. Thank you again to Ashley Ruthven for helping me behind the scenes with the tech side of the show. As I always say, that's certainly the more difficult side of it, especially when something goes wrong. And thank you today for watching the show. It's really important to have you guys as an audience, and also we're trying to make the show as best as possible for you guys. So if you ever have any feedback, please let us know. So don't forget to join us again at the same time on Thursday for the next episode of Careers and Coffee, where we have Alex Munn from Project 21 coming along. So it looks like a really interesting talk. I won't go too much into depth about it, or at all, in fact, because I don't want to ruin it. But keep a lookout for it when my colleague Kaylee will be hosting the show. Thank you again for joining us today. Have a great rest of the day, and I will see you soon.